Subway isn't just a sandwich shop. It's one of the most recognizable names in the history of fast food. At its peak in 2013, Subway operated more than 40,000 locations worldwide, making it the largest restaurant chain on earth by store count, even surpassing McDonald's. In the United States alone, over 27,000 outlets meant you were rarely more than a few minutes away from a foot-long Italian BMT or a buffalo chicken sub. But in less than a decade, that dominance began to crumble. Since 2016, the chain has closed more stores than it's opened, losing nearly 1,000 locations every year. Once a symbol of convenience, customization, and freshness, Subway has faced a sharp decline in customers, reputation, and relevance. How does a company that built itself on simplicity, affordability, and the promise to eat fresh end up here? This is a story of explosive growth, strategic missteps, headline-making scandals, and a changing food landscape. Today, we'll trace Subway's journey from a $1,000 idea by a 17-year-old in Connecticut to a global empire, and uncover the factors that took the biggest bite out of the brand.
The story of Subway begins in the summer of 1965 in Bridgeport, Connecticut, with a 17-year-old named Fred DeLuca. His dream was to become a medical doctor, a path that required years of study and a lot of money. At the time, Fred was working a summer job at a local hardware store, but it was clear that the paycheck wouldn't come close to covering his tuition. That's when he turned to a family friend, Dr. Peter Buck, a nuclear engineer. Buck suggested they open a simple sandwich shop to raise the money. With just a $1,000 investment from Buck, they launched a small store called Pete's Super Submarines. The concept was straightforward: serve customizable submarine sandwiches quickly and affordably. From the very beginning, simplicity was their advantage. Without fryers, broilers, or grease traps, the shop required minimal equipment, lower costs, and could fit into smaller spaces. But early on, even the name presented a problem. Their radio ads for Pete's Super Submarines were often misheard as Pizza Marines, which confused customers. Within a few years, they rebranded to a shorter, catchier name, Subway. Fred did make it to college, earning a degree in psychology instead of medicine, but the sandwich shop had already taken on a life of its own. By 1974, after 9 years in business, they had 16 locations. It was far from their goal of 32 stores within the first decade, but it marked the start of a much bigger expansion plan, one that would change the fast food industry.
By the mid-1970s, Fred DeLuca and Peter Buck knew they needed to accelerate growth. Their solution was franchising, allowing other entrepreneurs to open their own Subway stores in exchange for fees and adherence to the brand system. The model was perfectly suited to their business, with minimal equipment, lower startup costs, and the ability to operate in smaller spaces. Opening a Subway required far less investment than a typical fast food restaurant. This flexibility meant Subway could appear in unconventional locations, inside gas stations, hospitals, movie theaters, and airports. All that was needed was water and electricity, and the shop could function. By the 1980s and 1990s, this strategy fueled rapid expansion, turning Subway into one of the most accessible food brands in America. Their marketing played a big role, too. In 1983, Subway began baking its bread fresh in-store, filling restaurants with a distinctive aroma that became part of its identity. The Eat Fresh slogan, printed everywhere from napkins to menu boards, reinforced its promise of freshness. Promotions like the $5 footlong, launched in 2008, just before the global financial crisis, hit the perfect note, offering value at a time when customers were watching every dollar. Celebrity endorsements added another layer. Athletes like Michael Phelps and Blake Griffin, and most famously, Jared Fogle, the college student who lost 245 pounds eating Subway twice a day, helped position the chain as a healthier fast food option. Over 15 years, Fogle appeared in more than 300 commercials, and insiders credited the campaign with driving up to half of the company's growth during that period. By the early 2010s, Subway's footprint had surpassed 40,000 locations worldwide, making it the largest restaurant chain on the planet by unit count. But hidden beneath that triumph were cracks that would soon begin to widen. The first, and perhaps most obvious factor in Subway's decline was overexpansion. By the early 2010s, the chain had over 27,000 locations in the United States alone, so many that Subways began competing with other Subways. In countless towns, one store's biggest rival wasn't another sandwich chain, but the Subway down the street. Fred DeLuca's belief was that growth created an image of success, even if individual stores weren't profitable. But the result was oversaturation, lower average sales per store, and franchisees struggling to stay afloat. The second factor was the loss of its visionary founder. Fred DeLuca, who had built Subway from a $1,000 idea into a global empire, was deeply involved in the company, even visiting stores in disguise to check quality. After his leukemia diagnosis in 2013, he handed control to his sister in 2015 and passed away later that year. Without his leadership, the company faced a period of distraction and uncertainty, and notably, sales began to decline right after his death. Third was the collapse of its biggest advertising campaigns. Jared Fogle, the Subway guy, went from beloved spokesperson to public disgrace in 2015 when he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The other major marketing pillar, the $5 footlong, became financially unsustainable. By 2018, an attempt to revive it as the $4.99 footlong sparked backlash from franchisees who said it cut too deeply into profits. Fourth, Subway suffered from repeated reputation hits. Viral stories like the footlong measuring only 11 inches, accusations that its chicken was only 50% chicken, and claims its tuna wasn't real tuna spread rapidly online. Even when these claims were disputed or disproven, the damage to public perception lingered. Finally, the brand became stale. Years of minimal menu innovation left Subway lagging behind competitors in the fast casual space like Chipotle and Panera Bread, which offered fresher ingredients, trendier options, and a more modern experience. In 2019, new CEO John Chidsey launched the Eat Fresh Refresh, a massive overhaul with new sandwiches, ingredients, and even in-store meat slicers. It was one of the largest menu updates in Subway's history, but it came after years of declining momentum. Together, these factors, too many stores, the loss of leadership, failed campaigns, damaging scandals, and a stagnant brand image eroded Subway's dominance and turned a growth machine into a company fighting for relevance. Today, Subway is a very different company from the one that dominated the 2000s and early 2010s. In the U.S., its store count has fallen below 20,000 for the first time in roughly 2 decades, a steep drop from its 2013 peak. Internationally, the brand still maintains a large footprint, but its growth strategy has shifted from rapid expansion to consolidation and efficiency. Under CEO John Chidsey's leadership, Subway has invested heavily in revamping its menu and operations. The Eat Fresh Refresh campaign introduced new bread recipes, revamped core sandwiches, added premium ingredients, and brought back some fan favorites. In a major operational shift, the company spent around $80 million to install meat slices in stores, allowing them to prepare meats on-site instead of relying on pre-sliced products. The changes haven't been limited to the menu. Subway has rebranded its store interiors with brighter lighting, modern seating, and a cleaner, more contemporary look. It's also adjusted its marketing, using high-profile athletes like Steph Curry and Tom Brady to connect with a younger audience. In 2023, Subway was acquired by Roark Capital, a private equity firm with a deep portfolio of restaurant brands, including Jimmy John's. This ended its long run as a family-owned business and marked a new chapter focused on corporate-led transformation. Early indicators show sales per store improving, but whether these changes are enough to restore Subway's former glory remains an open question. From its humble beginnings in a small Connecticut shop to becoming the world's largest restaurant chain by store count, Subway's story is one of bold ambition and relentless expansion. For decades, it thrived on a formula of simplicity, affordability, and a carefully crafted image of freshness and health. But the same strategies that fueled its rise, rapid franchising, mass market campaigns, and a focus on sheer size, eventually became the cracks that threatened its foundation. The loss of its founder, the collapse of major marketing pillars, damaging public controversies, and a menu that lagged behind evolving tastes all contributed to its fall from dominance. Now, with new leadership, fresh branding, and private equity backing, Subway is trying to reinvent itself for a new era of dining. But the question remains, can a brand so tied to its past truly reinvent itself? Or has the market moved on? Does Subway still have the potential to lead in an age where consumers demand more transparency, more variety, and more personality from the places they eat? What's your take? Have you noticed the changes at Subway? And have they brought you back through its doors? Or do you think its best days are behind it? And, just out of curiosity, what's your go-to Subway order?